The best way to interact with you all and tell you about our mission and what are we going to develop was to have a similar conversation here with Amanda. It's interesting, the way how you approach it. We talk about these 4 angles that Beckley Med will address, to address psychedelic medicine. One of them being the elevation of consciousness, which seems to be the first step that you took, before you started your journey. You want to tell us a little bit about that time of your childhood when you...
Yes. Well, I'm very nervous of boring you all, because going from the subject we come to talk about to suddenly talk about my childhood. But I suppose it has a kind of vague relationship, because I've been at this game a long time, since whatever it is, a small child. Yeah. When I grew up in a very, very beautiful surroundings, a medieval fortress fallen down with 3 moats on the edge of a fen. But there were no children or kind of things to do, and my parents had no money, so there were no toys. Everyone had nothing to do but wander around and dream of the future and adventure and have mystical experiences, as children do. Mm-hmm. So then I got obsessed with mystical experiences, because my godfather was a Buddhist monk, quite a famous Buddhist monk. Mm-hmm. And so I got very fascinated with that, and from about the age of 10 studied it. And then what happened? And then I won a school science prize, and I wanted books on Buddhism, and the nuns forbid me to have Buddhism. They said I could have art. So I said, thank you very much, I'm leaving and I'm going to educate myself, thanks. And so I headed with £25, because that was all one could take out in those days, but also probably all one could get. And I headed to see him in Sri Lanka, Ceylon. And anyway, I never got there. Had all sorts of adventures. And
then you got to the point that you met Bart.
Then I got to a point when I started taking compounds, studied comparative religions at Oxford and mysticism, and then after a lot of psychedelics, I met Bart, and he was a Dutch scientist of exceptional brilliance, and he had 2 hypotheses. Funny enough, he'd just come from Ibiza, this was in 1966, where he had been he'd made LSD in Amsterdam, in his friend's mother's kitchen, and she'd thrown it away and had to start again. That was the LSD which turned Europe on from Ibiza. So I have a fond memory of Ibiza. And then that was my first LSD. And then I met Bart, and he basically gave me the understanding I was looking for, which was, what is a mystical experience? How is it that the psychedelics helps find that space? And so it brought 2 interests together, and his passion was science. And he had 2 hypotheses about, one, how changes in brain blood volume underlies the increase in consciousness. And it's giving a kind of farmer's explanation to consciousness. It's very basic and very simple.
And that was in 1967, are we talking about?
That was in 66, beginning of 66.
Right.
And the other great hypothesis he had was that the ego is a conditioned reflex mechanism by which we direct the blood in the brain where we want it to go.
So that was like the mechanism of action, basically.
Yeah. Yes. And we predicted that with psychedelics, it lost control, and that's when the whole brain became more unified.
And it was about that time that you kind of figured out your mission, right? Your mission of... So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, my mission had been, as a child, something like to water the desert. It was always kind of heroic and whatever, as childish things are. And then I realized, well, that my mission was actually to water the desert of the human brain, because I saw very soon that psychedelics can be a tool by which you can control the level of consciousness you have. And in a way, consciousness is our most precious gift, and to be able to have that in one's hands, to be able to meaningfully change the state. And if you want to concentrate, then you keep your sugar level normal. If you want to dig deep into your whatever depths, you don't. You let it float, dip. And basically, when we started taking LSD, particularly in the 60s, and very bright light, and anyway, I don't know, but I know LSD now is not a kind of fashionable drug, but I actually think it's an incredibly good drug.
Yeah, you kind of realize that you could live on psychedelics.
And I'm fighting for LSD because no one else is. And I think in the long term, people will come to realize that actually it's the best because it's the least toxic. I'm doing amazing research. Thank you so much. Amazing research with microdosing LSD at the moment, and showing that it increases neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, anti-inflammatory.
Right, but before you go to research, so your life mission would be to make sure that everybody knows that people can live in psychedelics and that they can be well.
Yeah.
And that there is,
they can increase wellness.
Increase wellness.
Yes.
And that's when you said, okay, how can I prove that to everybody? And that's when you said science is the way.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that?
Then, yes, exactly. I thought the repression, the taboo on these compounds had become so bad by the 70s that the only way through it was to use science to demonstrate the incredible potential of these compounds. And then the question was, how does one get the science done? And so for the next 30 years, I tried getting this science done without much success. So then I tried to spread the message using art, as no one minded what anyone said in art, because everyone knew it was fairly pointless, in a sort of way, pleasurable but pointless. And so one could talk about consciousness and the different ways of expanding it.
Right.
And so...
And through art, then you sort of...
Through art. And then I suddenly realized that as a female, without letters after my name, I wouldn't change global drug policy and open the doors to research. So I'd better become a foundation.
Yourself.
Yeah. And it's easily done. You can pay a few pounds.
Change your name, and you said, now I'm a foundation.
And my husband said that he thought he'd married a woman, and I married a foundation, which is which anyway. So with the foundation, I was lucky to get kind of 10, 15 of the best scientists in the world, including Albert Hoffman, Sasha, then one's in head of Oxford, all sorts of people, good top-level scientists.
Tim Knott?
What?
Your professor at Imperial that you work with.
Ah, yes. Then he was quite an underling, but now he's a big star.
Okay. Yes, it was just nascent.
But anyway.
Excellent. And that was your scientific advisory board?
They were my scientific. They never gave me any advice, but their presence...
But they give you access.
Actually, the first one who backed me from the conventional world is someone called... I suddenly forgot his name now. No, of course I haven't. Colin Blakemore, and he's a wonderful scientist. And when he backed me, which was brave of him to do, because I didn't have the best reputation, probably, and everyone else did afterwards. So I had, a whole school of top-level neuroscientists backing me. And that gave me a lot of more say, and I set up in the House of Lords doing policy reform, and then I set up doing research with different collaborations, and because I realized that brain imaging was the breakthrough, which developed in the 90s. And brain imaging, you can kind of prove, my old wanting to prove the benefits. You can
Your hypothesis from 1966.
Yeah, and to prove that psychedelics bring about a change and what it is and why it's beneficial. And so that's what we did. And I set up a team at Beckley Imperial psychedelic team with Dave Nutt and then Robin K.R. Harris. And we did some breakthrough research which helped move the movement forward, I think. One was, which was proving my old hypothesis, looking at the changes in blood supply in the brain on psilocybin, and that showed a decrease in the blood supply to a system called the default mode network, which is the modern word for ego, the modern expression. And the fact that the blood supply there is decreased and it's over supplied in underlying neurotic illnesses, psychological illnesses like depression, then we thought of doing using psilocybin to treat depression, and that had a very successful outcome.
And you also wrote books, and you wrote like 40 different reports.
Papers, and I played a part in them. And so then we did a lot of very successful research there, interesting, and with other I set up collaborations around the world and had a lot of fun.
And then you said the next step for this is to provide access through clinics, and that's when you met Mia.
Right.
Yes.
So yes, in whatever, 10, 15 years ago, when things were beginning to move forward, the next problem after letting people speak about the subject, then research it, then write about it, then it's not kind of a death sentence. And so we've done those, but then the point comes, once a lot of people have done research showing how amazingly beneficial it is, but how do people get access? And that's a big problem. So I was thinking about that, and for a while, and thinking of the different lines you can get. And because I did research all the time, I thought a clinic should have a research center in it, because then, one, you can expand the compounds you can legally use, and secondly, you can try practices which are more tailored to individual people, so you would be more fluid.
Mm-hmm. And you realize that in Spain it would be easier.
Exactly. And then my dear friend Pablo was living at Beckley in a cabin in the garden, and we used to have long talks. Right. And then he brilliantly introduced me to Mia, who came to Beckley, and was absolutely wonderful, and obviously a most glorious partner. And Spain is really amazing. I mean, England is really in the dinosaur stage. It's a kind of North Korea or something. So you can't do anything there. So, and Spain is brilliant. It hasn't legalized plants, illegalized plant medicines. You can actually do research with healthy people. I mean, this ridiculous taboo that the only excuse for using a psychedelic is to treat illness. I mean, we all love to treat illness, and that's a very good thing to do. But still, it's not the only thing to be done. You know?
What about prevention? Yes. So here we are continuing with those, and then Christian came in the picture, you guys got together.
Yes, and then my dear friend Christian came, and who had helped very, very generously some very exciting research in the Beckley Foundation. And so then there were 4 of us. Pablo, I hope you're there.
Pablo will be joining us.
He's out there. And anyway, it started to materialize. I mean, I'd been designing the kind of concept of a Beckley clinic, and I thought that there needs to be 4 arms. One, obviously, a clinic, but then one has a research center to expand the possibilities of the clinic. And one can do wonderful research. It's like having a CRO, a private clinic, so you can actually research. And then if you want to use compounds which aren't currently legal, you do it as research. And it has a lot of benefits.
Training
and then for training, exactly, you can give the people from America and other countries the compound, the experience of what they're doing, which is absolutely vital. And there's going to be vast number need of trained psychedelic therapists, because it just works better. That's what the research is showing. There's been no treatment for psychological disorders other than SSRIs and talking therapy. And that really isn't that good. I mean, it's good for some people, it helps, but not at all everyone. 50% are. And so psychedelics is the first new approach. And not only does I mean, pharmaceutical companies will not really love it, because people on the whole don't need many trips, doses. They can have a limited number of doses, which isn't ideal. But I always say, don't give up pharmaceutical companies, because there's always the microdose to come. And I think the microdose is an incredibly valuable substance. At the moment, I'm working with neurodegenerative illnesses using microdose. So I'm doing some very exciting work with Alzheimer's, with Parkinson's, and particularly with palliative care now. I'm doing 2 researches, one in Jamaica with natural psilocybin, another in America with LSD. Because old people, I've seen observational studies where a microdose can bring someone who's in deep Alzheimer's dementia, looking like a frightened, trapped animal. Very sad, sad sight for them and for their family. And then a microdose can suddenly bring back that vitality. And I've never seen that before, but I've seen it now, and it made me think I'm going to do palliative care, which provides, when people want it, microdosing as one of the possible treatments. And I think it can transform. At the moment, we die so badly that I think is one of the great areas of need, is improving how people die.
Absolutely, and we hope that we can continue supporting that research.
Yes.
Thank you so much for everything that you've done. It was really a pleasure to have you up here. And please join me to thank Amanda.